guys, it's Miss Sabrina again. We are so happy that you're here today for another GP Kids lesson. But before we get to our lesson today, let's review about last week's lesson on the Sermon on the Mount.
Hey everyone, it's Mr. Andrew. Last week we learned that Jesus is the Good Shepherd. God's people are like the sheep. They need a good leader, a trustworthy shepherd. Jesus is our shepherd. He cares for us, leads us, and keeps us safe from the thieves and robbers when we follow him. Let's see what our big picture question is now.
Hey guys, it's Miss Erica. This week we have a new big picture question. It is, why did Jesus perform miracles? Jesus performed miracles to glorify God, to show that he was the Son of God, and to care for people. Let's watch our Bible story video now.
Jesus spent all day teaching crowds of people near the Sea of Galilee. That evening, Jesus wanted to cross over to the other side of the sea. So Jesus and his disciples left the crowds. They got into a boat and began sailing. Some of the people from the crowds followed in their own boats. While Jesus and his disciples traveled, Jesus fell asleep on a cushion at the back of the boat. All of a sudden, a storm came. The wind was strong and the waves crashed into the boat. Water was coming into the boat and the disciples were afraid. Many of the disciples were fishermen. They had survived storms on the sea before, but this storm was different. It was so strong. If the water kept coming in the boat would sink. Surely they would all drown. The disciples looked to Jesus for help, but Jesus was still fast asleep at the back of the boat. He didn't seem to even notice the storm. Did Jesus care if they were about to sink into the sea? The disciples woke up Jesus. "Lord, save us," they said. "We are going to die." Jesus opened his eyes and saw that his friends were afraid. He got up and spoke to the wind. Then Jesus said to the sea, "Silence! Be still." At the sound of Jesus' voice, the wind stopped blowing and the waves stopped crashing. Everything was calm. The disciples were safe. Jesus looked at his disciples and asked, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Did the disciples not trust Jesus to take care of them? The disciples were amazed. "Who is this man?" they asked each other. "Even the wind and the waves obey him." Jesus' disciples knew Jesus was a good man and a good teacher. But when Jesus calmed the wind and the waves, he showed his disciples that he is also God. God rules the sea and stills its waves.
Hi again, it's Miss Sabrina. Today's story is found in 3 different books of the New Testament. It's found in Matthew chapter 8, Mark chapter 4, and also in Luke chapter 8. But we're going to read the account in Mark chapter 4, beginning in verse 35. Let's do that now. Jesus calms a storm. On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was, and other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. He said to them, "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, "Who is this then, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" So Jesus had been teaching all day, and he got into the boat with his disciples and he fell asleep, right? Have you ever slept through a storm? What about one that was outside? Let's close our eyes for a minute. Think about being Jesus in that boat. Think about being with the disciples in that boat. You're in this boat and all of a sudden the wind comes up and the waves are crashing and maybe some water's even splashing in. And just imagine how scared the disciples would be. And just think about whether or not you would be able to sleep through that. Okay, go ahead and open your eyes. Could you imagine doing that? I think it would be really crazy, right? But the storm was so intense that the disciples thought that they were going to die. In verse 38, they even say to Jesus, they assume that he doesn't care about what happens to them. They say, do you not care that we're going to perish? But Jesus got up and he rebuked the waves and the wind, and the storm stopped immediately. He said, peace, be still. Jesus calmed the storm to show his disciples that he is God. And how did the disciples react to this miracle? In verse 41, they said, oh my gosh, who is this man that even the wind and the sea obey him? They knew that Jesus was no ordinary man. Jesus' disciples knew that he was a good man, and they knew that he was a good teacher. But when Jesus calmed the storm, there was no doubt in their mind that he was God. God rules the sea and he stills its waves. God is the ruler over everything. Hey, it's time for our questions from kids videos. So let's check out what Pastor Brian has to say this week.
Hi there, I'm Pastor Brian and it's time for questions from kids. Charlie from Albany, Georgia asks,
why do we have bad days?
oh, Charlie, we all have bad days. That is the reality of life. This is a great question that I think is really going to be helpful for a lot of people. So the short answer is this. We have bad days because we live in a fallen world. God's design was for there to be no bad days. If you think back in creation, Genesis 1 and 2, there were no bad days that were orchestrated for Adam and Eve. If you think about what awaits us in eternity, Revelation 21 and 22, there are no bad days there either. It's all in between because of sin that we have bad days. And it's this way. So sometimes I have a bad day because I'm just not walking with Christ and I'm sinning. And that's gonna be a problem, right? And I'm gonna have a hard, difficult, bad day because of my own sin. There are other days that I might be having a bad day because of the sin of others. Maybe somebody's wronged me and that's hard, hurt my heart. And so it's hard to have those kind of days. Other days, it's just the situation in life. I'm gonna be sitting in a lot of traffic. That's a bad day. It's not because of maybe sin directly, it's just the reality of life. And so all these things can happen and give us hard, difficult days. But here is what we have to remember, that these days are temporary. God has given us this great gift called sleep, hasn't he? Think about it. You have a really hard day, and then you're able to go to bed at night, and it may be hard to fall asleep because those things are still replaying, but eventually you drift off to sleep. And what happens? You wake up the next day, and it's a new day. It's a gift from God. It's a fresh start. You can put that bad day to end. You can put it to bed. You wake up then, and you have a brand new day and say, today's gonna be different. And God can bless you, and you can have the greatest day ever right after having that bad day. So we remember that it's temporary, but also remember that even if that bad day feels long, even if you wake up the next day and you have another bad day, here's the reality, here's the beautiful truth. God is with you. He's right there with you. You can turn to him, you can sigh to God and say, this is hard. And you know that God knows this because Jesus experienced bad days as well in his ministry on earth. So we have a God who loves us, we have a God who cares, a God who knows that we can go to for encouragement. We also have one another. When you're having a bad day, God has given us this gift in one another that you can go to parents or a friend or a teacher and just share and be encouraged by one another and be encouraged to hang in there, to get through it as God is with you. We have one another to love us through it as well. So here's a question for you. How can you encourage someone who is having a bad day?
Hey there, let's go over our memory verse. It is Psalm 45. So Psalm chapter 40, verse 5. It's gonna be on the screen now, so read this with me. You have multiplied, O Lord my God, your wondrous deeds and your thoughts towards us. None can compare with you. I will proclaim and tell of them, yet they are more than that can be told. Go ahead and work on that and memorizing that this week.
Holy Father, Son, and Spirit, Holy Communion, three in one. Holy Father, Son, and Spirit, bind us together in holy love. Come with your peace, with your invitation, bind us together in holy love. Holy Father, Son, and Spirit, Holy Communion, three in one. Holy Father, Son, and Spirit, Holy Communion, three in one. Holy Father, Son, and Spirit, Holy Communion, three in one. Holy Father, Son, and Spirit, Holy Communion, three in one. Holy Father, Son, and Spirit. Holy Father, Son, and Spirit. Holy Father, Son, and Spirit. Three in one, three in one, three in one.
This week, I want to challenge you to make a list of people that you know and love and that are in your life that you know need to hear about God's love for them. And even though we cannot really meet with them in person right now, maybe some of them you can't because they don't live here, they're far away from you, that does not mean that we cannot go to God on their behalf in prayer. So that's what I challenge you to do. I challenge you to make a list of people that you know that need to know about God's love for them. And then I challenge you to go to God in prayer about how you can reach out to them and show them the love of God no matter how far away or how distant we are right now. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.